Accept everything, not as weakness, as strength. Because nothing steals your fire more quietly than resistance to what already is. This is where the Stoic life begins. Not in the future, not in fantasy. Right here, in what you are unwilling to face. That's the cost, not suffering itself, but the refusal to face it. Because most people aren't broken by life. They're broken by the story they told themselves about what life was supposed to be. This is the first lesson. You cannot begin to command your soul until you've accepted the full weight of the world as it is. Not what you hoped for. Not what you planned for. What is. You were born into a world that doesn't care what you prefer. It moves with or without your permission. So why exhaust yourself resisting the natural rhythm of a world that never asked for your approval? The Stoics knew better. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the largest empire on earth, woke each morning with this thought. Today I will meet interference, ingratitude, betrayal, rudeness, selfishness, and dishonesty. Not because they wish to harm me, but because they do not know better. That's not pessimism, that's preparation, that's mental armor. That's how you step into the arena of life without flinching. Because you've stopped hoping for comfort, you've stopped begging the world to be kind, you've stopped expecting anything but the truth, and the truth is this: pain is part of the path. Disappointment is inevitable. Loss is not a glitch, it is guaranteed. And if that makes you bitter, you have already lost. But if that makes you disciplined, now you're ready. Because the Stoic does not ask life to bend. He bends himself, not in surrender, in strategy. He studies what is real. He accepts it fully. And then, he begins to move, without complaint, without flinching, without needing anything else to change. Because that is power. Not the power to change the storm, but the power to move through it with total presence. You see, acceptance is not a soft virtue. It is a warrior's posture. It is the refusal to waste your strength arguing with the sky. It is the quiet courage of saying, I did not choose this, but I choose my response, and that is enough, that is everything. Because in that moment, you return to yourself. No longer clinging, no longer begging, no longer fighting the current with your bare hands. You become still. You observe. You breathe. And then you act. From clarity, from calm, from the center that no storm can touch. That is the Stoic beginning, not noise, not action, not optimism. Just this. Face what is, fully, entirely, without illusion. And once you've done that, you're ready for the next step. But if you skip this, you will carry resistance into every decision and wonder why your life never feels still. Acceptance is the foundation. It is not passive. It is not emotional resignation. It is the sharpest clarity a man can carry. The kind that whispers, this is happening. So now, what is mine to do? That is how the Stoic wakes. Not with fear, with focus. And that is where your power begins. Acceptance is not a moment, it's not a breath, it's not a quote. It is a way of moving through the world, without breaking from yourself. You don't accept just what's easy. You don't accept just what you understand. You accept all of it. The mess, the betrayal, the chaos, the absence of closure, the unfairness that never apologizes. You accept, not because you like it, but because it is real. And that is enough. This is where most people fail. They think acceptance is permission. That, if I accept someone's cruelty, I must condone it. That if I accept a painful loss, I must be okay with it. No. Acceptance is not consent. It's clarity. It's seeing the world without asking it to lie to you. It's walking into a day knowing full well it may hold difficulty, disorder, discomfort, and still walking straight. Without complaint, without flinching, without changing who you are just because reality refused to cater to you. You think that's weakness? No. That's the highest form of strength. To remain clear, composed, and true in a world that offers 100 reasons a day to fall into despair, distraction, or bitterness. The Stoic doesn't resist truth. He integrates it. Because what you resist controls you. What you deny enslaves you. What you fight blindly owns your energy. But what you face with eyes wide open, what you welcome without flinching, what you study without distortion, that no longer owns you. That becomes part of your training, part of your fire, part of your inner steel. So yes, accept it all. Accept the people who won't change. Accept the moments that never come back. Accept the sharp edge of your own past mistakes. Not to excuse them, to integrate them into the man you are now. Because a man who walks half in denial walks crooked, and the Stoic does not walk crooked. He walks grounded, balanced, and when life pushes, he does not collapse, he absorbs, he steadies, he adjusts, because he has built his mind like a fortress, not to keep the world out, but to keep himself in, centered, intact, aligned. And this alignment, it is built on the brutal beauty of saying, yes, this too, this moment, this event, this pain. I will not turn away. I will not decorate it. I will not delay my life until it changes. I will meet it, and I will remain. That is a vow, and it is not made once. It is made daily, hourly, silently, in how you answer the phone, in how you respond to an insult, in how you carry your breath when things break, again, and they will break. That's the point. This world was never promised to be soft, but it promised you this. Every single thing that comes your way is training, not punishment, not karma, not injustice. Training to temper your expectations, to widen your clarity, to strengthen your response, to refine your internal architecture until you no longer shake. That is why you accept. Not because it's easy, because it's required, because the only alternative is to argue with the sky and die exhausted, angry, half asleep. But not you. You're done with that. You have accepted the role. You have stepped into the flame. You do not look away from what hurts, because it might be the exact thing that shapes you. And even if it isn't, even if there is no lesson, you accept it, still, because it's yours. And if it's yours, you carry it with discipline. That is the second step. Expect nothing. Not because life owes you pain, because it owes you nothing. This is the third lesson. Every expectation is a leash. The moment you demand, you become dependent. It begins subtly. You want them to call. You expect them to understand. You assume they'll do the right thing. You believe your effort deserves a return. And when they don't, you rage, you shrink, you spiral. Not because of what happened, but because of what you expected. The event didn't betray you. Your demand did. And that is where Stoicism parts ways with the world. The world teaches you to hope, to visualize, to manifest, to expect good things, because you deserve them. The Stoic says no, you deserve nothing, but the chance to act rightly in whatever comes. No outcome is guaranteed. No timing is promised. No person is obliged to meet the script you wrote in silence and assumed they received. So expect nothing. Not to be cynical, to be untouchable, because expectation breeds fragility, and fragility invites suffering. But detachment clears the way for action, real action, clean action, action without the sticky residue of what you owe me. You give, because giving is right. You love, because loving is aligned with your values. You build, because creation is your duty. Not because anyone will clap, not because the world will reward you. You are not here to be fed by circumstance. You are here to feed it, to show up as an instrument of virtue regardless of the score. That is where freedom lives, not in outcomes, in orientation, in the quiet fire of waking up and saying, I don't expect it to be easy. I don't expect it to be fair. I don't expect the crowd to understand. And yet, I rise. You see, the Stoic lives like a soldier without guarantee of victory. He marches anyway, not because he's sure he will win, but because he is sure of why he fights. And when you are that clear, you don't need the world to behave. You don't need it to reward you. You don't need it to even notice. You only need to act rightly and let go, because expectation is a subtle ego. It believes it knows how things should unfold. It tries to write the future with a trembling hand. It gets angry when life edits the script. And so the Stoic burns the script. He replaces it with this: whatever comes, I will meet it like a man. I will not complain. I will not plead. I will not make my peace dependent on things I cannot control. That's the dividing line. Most people only feel good when things go their way. The Stoic feels good when he goes the right way, regardless of where it leads, because that's real power. To walk through disappointment without self-pity, to witness betrayal without crumbling, to see the plan fail and not lose your form. You don't need less difficulty. You need fewer expectations. Because expectations are just attachments in disguise, and attachments are the strings others pull when they want to own you. But if you've let go, if you've trained yourself to give everything and expect nothing, you are free. Free from the mood swings of the market, free from the reactions of others, free from the weight of what should have happened. You deal only in what is, and what is in your control. That is the currency of the Stoic. That is the terrain of the warrior, and that is the third step. Control yourself. That's the third pillar, the final gate, the beginning of freedom. Because until you master yourself, you are a puppet, not of people, but of your own reactions. This is the fourth lesson. You do not need to control the world. You only need to control yourself. And that is enough to change everything. But don't confuse control with suppression. The Stoic doesn't pretend to be made of stone. He feels. He bleeds. He breaks. But he never lets those waves take the wheel. Because he knows you don't need to eliminate emotion to be free. You need to train it. Like a wild horse. Like a fire. Like a weapon that burns everything unless it's aimed. And the only way to train it, discipline. Not once. Daily. Discipline of thought. Discipline of speech. Discipline of reaction. You feel anger? Good. That means you're alive. Now pause. Now breathe. Now ask. Is this the right response? Or is this just the first impulse? See, men never ask, they just swing, they just shout. They just justify the chaos inside them with some false flag called honesty. But the Stoic, he holds. Not because he's afraid, because he's precise, because he knows any man can react. But to respond, cleanly, consciously, correctly, that is rare. That is power. That is control. Not the power to dominate others, the power to refuse being dominated by yourself. Because there's a tyrant in every man, and he doesn't live outside. He lives in the limbic brain, in the unchecked response, in the story that says, I can't help it, this is just how I am. The Stoic kills that voice, not with shame, with training. He wakes early, not to impress, but to command the day before it commands him. He speaks less, not because he's shy, but because he understands the weight of words. He says no to excess, not because he fears pleasure, but because pleasure without measure turns men into children. He practices austerity, not for religion, but for readiness, because a man who cannot delay gratification cannot lead his own life, and a man who cannot lead himself will always follow something lesser. So the Stoic leads, not crowds, himself. He leads his reactions, his habits, his choices, and he sharpens that leadership until nothing inside him moves without reason. That is not rigidity, that is liberation, because now no one can trigger him, no one can bait him, no one can rattle him. He is not without feeling, he is without obedience to feeling. And that changes everything, because you don't need to control outcomes, only how you show up for them. You don't need to control people, only how you respond to their presence. You don't need to control fate, only how you walk through it. That's what control means in the Stoic code: sovereignty. Not over kingdoms, over your own soul. And sovereignty, once built, cannot be stolen, because it's not built from fear. It's built from consistency, from choice, from the quiet act of returning to what's right, every single time you are tempted to choose what is. Easy control is not dramatic, it is quiet, it is calm, it is the moment you want to lash out, and instead you breathe and say nothing. It is the moment you want to escape, and instead you remain. It is the moment you want to abandon the practice, and instead you begin again. Not for glory, for dignity, for command. Because the man who controls himself is the man no one can control, and that is the fourth step. Now you see it. These are not just ideas, not just values, not just words written in old scrolls. They are tactics, they are weapons, they are shields. Accept everything, expect nothing. Control yourself. 3 commands, 3 blades, 3 lines drawn in the sand behind which no enemy can cross. This is the 5th lesson. Your philosophy is not a decoration. It is your armor. It is your discipline. It is your edge. Because life does not care what you believe. It only responds to what you do. When the insult comes, will you absorb it or explode? When the delay drags on, will you panic or pause? When the outcome collapses, will you curse it or meet it with clarity? This is no longer theoretical. This is daily war, the kind you fight alone, not against others, but against the subtle pull to react, to expect, to complain, to control what was never yours. So now you apply it, not in ideal conditions, but in real ones. You're stuck in traffic. You're overlooked again. You're told one thing, then shown another. You're met with silence when you needed clarity. You're forgotten, misjudged, dismissed. What do? You accept. Not because it's fair, because it's real. You expect nothing. Not because you're numb, because you've trained your nervous system to stop depending on externals. You control yourself, not with clenched fists, with slow breath, with calm voice, with precise words. That is strategy. Not suppression, not denial, but a chosen posture in the face of noise. Because what you do in the fire becomes who you are in the mirror, and the Stoic does not flinch in fire. He uses it to refine, to reveal, to rise, because he understands the world is not here to make you happy. It is here to make you strong, but only if you use it, only if you stop negotiating with things outside your reach, only if you start building within your own walls. That's where the real work happens. Not in books, not in speeches, in that 1 second between stimulus and response, when your training steps forward or your instinct takes over. That second, it's everything. It's the battlefield of the modern warrior, and the Stoic wins it with repetition. He drills the posture until it's no longer effort, it's identity. He rehearses patience in small moments, so he can carry it into war. He says no to distraction not because he hates pleasure, but because attention is sacred. He keeps his space clean, his words few, his movements sharp, not for style, but for self-command. And when the world offers him chaos, he does not flail. He selects his response the way a general selects a blade, not out of emotion, but precision. Because to the Stoic, this is not philosophy. It is protocol. It is standard. It is code. And that code? It's not flexible. It doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't bend to comfort. It simply asks, is this aligned with the man you claim to be? If yes, proceed. If no, pause. Simple. Unforgiving. Liberating because there's no confusion. You don't need motivation. You don't need good conditions. You don't need to feel ready. You only need to act in accordance, to move in sync with what you say you value. And every time you do, something shifts. The noise outside loses power. The weakness within loses voice. And you become dangerous. Not to others, but to everything that once owned you. That is the fifth step. Now they begin to merge. Accept everything. Expect nothing. Control yourself. Individually, they are powerful. Together, they are unbreakable. This is the sixth lesson. Each principle supports the others. When practiced in unison, they become a shield that nothing outside you can penetrate. Think of it as a fortress with 3 walls. Acceptance keeps chaos from invading. Detachment from expectations keeps disappointment from breeding. Self-control keeps your fire from turning inward and burning you. Remove one, the whole structure weakens. Because what good is acceptance if you still cling to outcomes? What good is self-control if you expect the world to reward you every time? What good is detachment if you collapse every time pain knocks? This is why the Stoic doesn't pick and choose these principles. He drills all 3. Like a swordsman trains both hands. Like a guard trains eyes and ears and posture. Because life doesn't come at you from one direction. It throws storms from every angle, so your structure must be complete. Full circle, self-contained. Here's how it looks in motion. You lose something. Maybe a person, maybe an opportunity, maybe time you can't get back. Your first reflex? Sorrow, regret, frustration, but the Stoic breathes. He says, accept. This has already happened. It is part of my path now. I will not waste my soul resisting what has already entered. Then the voice of expectation creeps in. This isn't fair. I thought it would be different. I deserved more. And again, the Stoic answers, expect nothing. No one promised me comfort. No one guaranteed success. No one owes me symmetry. I will move forward regardless. Then comes the anger. The temptation to lash out, to blame, to break something, to spiral. And once more, the Stoic tightens the grip. Control yourself. This is the moment I decide what kind of man I am. I will not react, I will respond. From discipline, from clarity, from stillness, that's it. 3 steps, not theory, tactic. And with those 3 steps, the spiral breaks, the pain remains. But the man stays upright, and that's everything. Because life will keep coming. It does not pause for your disappointment. It does not bend for your opinion. It only offers you this. Here it is. Now, what will you do? And if you live with these 3 principles fused into your nervous system, you know what to do. You don't rush. You don't shrink. You don't get pulled into the drama. You simply act rightly. You move as someone who has already buried the need to be spared, because that's what these 3 principles give you. Not immunity from pain, but immunity from distortion. You see clearly. You walk cleanly. You rise calmly. You live like someone who doesn't need the world to cooperate, just the inner machine to remain in alignment. And alignment is not a feeling. It is a discipline. Triangle you reinforce every time life pushes. Accept what is. Expect nothing. Control yourself. Every time you do, the walls grow thicker, the center grows quieter, and the outside world grows weaker in its ability to move you. That's not detachment. That's freedom. Not built on escape. Built on structure. A structure no one can see, but everyone can feel in how you walk, speak, decide, endure. You are not a slave to storms. You are not a puppet of preference. You are not a reactor. You are a living system of order inside disorder. And that is the 6th step. Now it's real. Now it's no longer practice. Now you're in the moment that once unraveled you, and you don't flinch. You observe. You hold. You move. Not because you feel powerful, because you feel centered. And that's the shift most never make. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel calm. They wait for the noise to die down so they can think clearly. But the Stoic doesn't wait. He decides. In the noise. In the heat. In the mess. Because waiting for calm is not control. Control is acting with calm before it returns. This is the 7th lesson. When the 3 pillars are alive in you, you no longer react to life. You respond to it from your own code. Your life becomes a series of choices, not a series of reflexes. You feel the sting, and you don't rush to relieve it. You feel the pull, and you don't let it steer the wheel. You hear the insult, and you don't take the bait. Because the goal isn't to feel nothing, it's to feel everything, and not become anything. You don't choose. You don't let emotion write your script. You don't let pain rewire your principles. You don't let the crowd draft your direction. You remain still, grounded, dangerously precise. The world throws fog at you. You don't swing wildly, you narrow your vision. You lower your stance. You move with deliberate weight, because you are not here to be fast. You are here to be true. That's what separates the Stoic from the instinctive man. He doesn't rush to fix what can't be fixed. He doesn't panic when the map doesn't match the ground. He adapts, but without losing his orientation. Because his direction is not drawn from comfort or ease or emotion. His direction is drawn from virtue. And virtue does not bend to circumstance. Virtue remains. Justice remains, courage remains, discipline remains, wisdom remains, even when the world spins upside down, especially then, because that's the moment you are most tempted to collapse. and the moment that most defines who you are. And now? Now you walk through it like a man who knows. The storm is not here to test me. It is here to reveal me. And what it reveals is this: you are no longer moved by noise, no longer baited by approval, no longer weakened by discomfort. You move from one place, your center, and that center is held in place by 3 laws. Accept what is. Expect nothing. Control yourself. You don't perform them. You don't recite them. You embody them. In how you walk into a room, in how you respond to provocation, in how you decline temptation, without needing to explain why. You are no longer explainable. You are no longer editable. You are no longer programmable by forces that once claimed your clarity, because now you've seen what it's like to stand firm, and you're not going back. The man who has tasted inner command will never again kneel to outer chaos. He may bend, he may bleed, but he will not betray himself. That is the line. That is the law. That is the man you've become, not by dreaming, but by drilling, by choosing again and again to return to your code, even when it would have been easier to drift, and that is the 7th step. You don't speak much anymore, not because you've run out of things to say, because your words no longer need to be heard to matter. You've tasted something quieter than validation. Integrity. This is the 8th lesson. When you live from the center, the loudest part of you is your action, and even that doesn't need to be seen. You stop announcing, you stop warning, you stop hinting that you're doing the right thing. You just do it, and move on. Because you no longer need recognition to remain aligned. Recognition is fragile, fleeting, fickle. You've traded it for something that doesn't rust. Self-respect. And self-respect is earned in silence, when no one is watching, when no one says thank you, when no one claps. You still choose the harder path, because it is the right one. That's Stoicism at its highest. Not just power, not just restraint, but restraint without the need to be seen restraining. You hold back, you endure, you decline the low road, and you don't tweet about it. You just keep walking. That's what makes the Stoic rare, because most men will do what's right, as long as someone notices. But take away the applause, take away the audience, and they vanish, not you. You've buried the craving for praise. You've learned how to carry the weight alone and then smile beneath it. Because the weight isn't punishment. It's yours. It's your code, your burden, your standard, and you carry it not because it's easy, but because if you don't, no one else will. That's what it means to lead yourself. It means you stop asking what others are doing. You stop adjusting to the weather of the room. You stop comparing pace, outcome, visibility, because you're not here to be known. You're here to do the work. And if the work is invisible, even better. You never trusted fame anyway. You've seen how many loud men crumble when the lights go out. You've seen how many performers drown in their own reflection. You don't need that. You don't need them. You only need this. What does this moment require of me? And am I disciplined enough to give it without asking anything in return? That's your North Star. That's what keeps your boots grounded when others chase clouds. And yes, the silence will get loud sometimes. Yes, the solitude will feel like exile, but you stay. Because you've discovered something the world will never understand. Quiet doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening where it matters most, inside. And that interior world, it's no longer a storm. It's a forge. You sharpen there. You simplify there. You rehearse your return to virtue there, until it becomes your reflex. So, when the call comes, you're ready. Not excited, not anxious. Ready. You show up, do the work, leave without a trace. No noise, no need, no nameplate required. Just presence, just posture. Just the weight of a man who didn't need to be celebrated to remain correct. That's the level most never reach. Not because they couldn't let go of being seen, but you have. And what you found on the other side of that letting go was not emptiness, it was freedom. That is the 8th step. You are no longer becoming, you are now being. This is the 9th lesson. There comes a point when Stoicism is no longer a practice. It is your presence. No more effort, no more reminders, no more post-it notes on mirrors, just life. Lived rightly. Automatically, quietly. You've crossed the line between discipline and embodiment. You are no longer trying to be still. You simply are. You are no longer choosing virtue. You are virtue in motion. You are no longer reaching for clarity. You carry it like a blade unshaken in your belt. And people will feel it, even if they don't know what they're feeling. They'll speak to you with a different tone. They'll look at you longer. They'll hesitate before lying, before overreacting, before showing off. Not because you've judged them, but because your presence makes it harder for them to lie to themselves. That is the weight of the Stoic. Not dominance, conviction, lived. And conviction, when carried with stillness, creates an invisible perimeter, not to keep people out, to keep yourself intact. Because now, your presence is not about what you project, it's about what you withhold. You don't rush to correct. You don't react to noise. You don't reach to be liked. You don't even identify with your restraint anymore. You've gone further than that. You've become empty of ornament, full of substance, no slogans, no masks. No need to label yourself a Stoic, because if you are one, it will be felt, not said. You don't belong to the label. You belong to the practice. And the practice has disappeared into your breath, your tone, your walk, your pauses, your exits. You don't just carry Stoicism. You are Stoicism, clothed in bone and muscle. You don't need the name. You don't need to explain your way of life, because now, the proof is in your existence, in how you sit in silence, in how you take loss with clean hands, in how you speak with neither fear nor aggression, only with necessity. You've reached the place where even desire for identity dissolves. You don't need to be seen as good. You don't even need to be remembered. You only need to remain aligned with the deep logic of life and leave when it is time, untouched by anything that tried to move you. Because now you understand. You were never meant to be an influencer. You were meant to be a force. The quiet kind, the rooted kind. The kind that shapes a room without saying a word. The kind that carries the weight of 1,000 decisions made in silence, without compromise. That's who you are now. You don't ask for reward. You don't cling to legacy. You don't track your virtues like coins in a jar. You give. You do. You move on. Because you are no longer a man practicing a philosophy. You are a living principle. And living principles? They don't retire. They don't negotiate. They don't falter when misunderstood. They simply exist. And in that existence, shape the world around them more than 10,000 speeches ever could. That is the 9th step. You will die. This is not a threat, not a metaphor, not a poetic device. It is a certainty, carved deeper than any promise life will ever give you. And the Stoic, he does not run from it. He invites it into the room. He seats it at the table. Because until you face death with your whole mind, your life will never be your own. This is the 10th lesson. You cannot live rightly unless you are at peace with leaving. Death is not the end. It is the measure. It tells you what matters. It burns away what's fake. It leaves you only with what's essential. And if you're wise, you use it. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That is not pessimism. That is posture. It is how you meet the day. Not with assumption, but with urgency. Not with entitlement, but with gratitude. Not with noise, but with presence. Because the Stoic knows he owns nothing. Not this breath, not this moment, not this body, not this voice. He is borrowing all of it, and at any moment the contract ends. So what does he do? He lives as if it will be taken tonight, and in doing so, he becomes immovable by things that no longer matter. The insult? Let it pass. The loss of wealth? It was never his. The missed opportunity? It wasn't owed to begin with. That's the freedom death gives. Clarity. You want to be free? Then die before you die. Let go before it's take and speak the words. Walk the path. Cut what needs cutting. Heal what needs healing. Because there is no later. There is only now. And the weight you carry into the grave. Make it light. You think fear of death will keep you humble? No, it will keep you small. You'll cling, you'll hesitate, you'll betray yourself to buy time that never arrives. But the Stoic? He is done trading his soul for more minutes. He does not want more time. He wants used time. Time spent well, time spent clean, time that leaves no residue. So he keeps his life tidy. He says what must be said. He forgives what must be released. He chooses truth over comfort because comfort cannot follow him into the ground. Only virtue can. That is why he is calm. Not because he believes in some afterlife, but because he has nothing unresolved, nothing rotting in the dark. Nothing unsaid in the silence, nothing unacted in the name of someday. He lives so completely that death finds nothing to take, except what was always borrowed. And when that moment comes, he doesn't cry out. He exhales. He returns what was never his with the same discipline he carried through every morning. I did not waste it. I did not run. I did not demand more. I gave what I could. I leave without weight. That's the kind of man Stoicism builds. Not the man who lives longest. The man who dies cleanest. Because death is not a thief. It is a clock. And when you understand it, really understand it, you stop asking for more time and start making better use of what little is already yours. That is the 10th step. What if no one remembers you? What if every name is forgotten? What if your story ends, not with applause, not with a monument, but with a quiet disappearance? Would that change how you live? Would it rattle your purpose? Would it make you pull back if yes, and then your compass is still facing outward? But the Stoic? He has burned that compass. He lives from something deeper than legacy. This is the 11th lesson. You are not here to be remembered. You are here to live rightly, whether anyone sees it or not. Most people don't live. They perform. For a memory. For a name. For a place in someone's future narrative. They measure each act by how it echoes, by how long it lingers, by how many repeat it. And in doing so, they become slaves to the after-image. But the Stoic, he knows how little time he has, so he spends it on impact, not imprint. He asks each morning, if this is the last day, am I doing what needs doing, even if no one ever knows I did it? That question strips the noise. It silences the performative self. It removes the costume. It leaves only the bare, useful hand doing the work. And that work? It's not always grand. It's often quiet, unseen, thankless. But it is good. And that goodness doesn't need to be documented to be real. It doesn't need to be shared to have value. It only needs to be done. That's the clarity you carry now. You don't need your name to outlive you. You don't need to be quoted. You don't need a legacy carved in marble. You just need to be clean when you leave. And to be clean, you live like this. Speak only what you mean. Act only from alignment. Take only what is yours. Leave everything lighter than you found it and vanish and without resistance, because the free man, he does not grip. He does not hoard. He does not count the statues. He lives by fire, not by footprint, by presence, not projection. And when the end comes, he does not reach for relevance. He has already burned that hunger down to ash. He does not ask to be remembered. He only asks, did I do what was mine to do? If yes, he bows. And if not, he begins again. Not from shame, from discipline, because even as death approaches, there is still one thing that cannot be taken: the next right action. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to be clean, carried out with a full heart and an empty hand. You don't need to be recorded. You only need to be right. Now, that is how the Stoic lives. And that is why, when the world forgets him, it changes anyway. Because he didn't need to be seen to shape it. He shaped it through every uncelebrated gesture, every unshared choice, every silent refusal to become what the world begged him to be. He shaped it by being the kind of man no one could control, not even history. That is the 11th step. There is no destination, no grand finale, no final applause, no cosmic bow waiting for you behind some curtain. There is only this: the silence at the end of duty. That is where we're going. That's what this entire journey was preparing you for. Not to win, not to be remembered, but to vanish cleanly. This is the final lesson. You do not need to leave a legacy. You only need to leave nothing behind that does not belong to virtue. No lingering guilt, no buried words, no half-finished truths. You do not leave behind confusion. You do not leave behind chaos. You do not leave behind yourself. Because you've already given everything that was yours to give. You've already returned what was never meant to be kept. You've already burned the last illusion that life owes you more time. It doesn't. It never did. And now you walk forward with nothing in your hands, because that's the only way to leave rightly. Nothing gripped, nothing hidden, nothing unspoken. You go as you came, naked, undistracted, unburdened, but not the same. Because this time, you go as someone who chose his every step, who refused to be bent by what broke other men, who stood where others begged, who acted where others hesitated, who endured what would have made others surrender. And you did it not for pride, not for glory, not even for peace. You did it because it was right, because there was a fire inside you that answered only to truth. And now the fire dims, not because it's gone, but because it's no longer needed. You have nothing left to prove, no battle left to fight, no version of yourself left to protect. You've become smaller than a name and larger than your lifetime. You are no longer a man. You are a principle. You are alignment, made flesh, and even the flesh now falls away. You bow your head, not in defeat, But in discipline, I have accepted what came. I have expected nothing from it. I have controlled myself in the face of all of it, and now I go, without resistance, without noise, without fear. And that silence, it is not emptiness. It is the sound of a soul who has completed its sentence and placed the period without trembling. That's the end. Not dramatic, not mournful, just precise. Just the final movement in a life lived like a sword, drawn only when necessary, sheathed without emotion, forged without audience. You will not be celebrated. You will not be quoted. You will not be seen again. But the world will have changed because you passed through it. Because for a short, exact window of time, a human being lived without being owned. He spoke with weight. He moved with meaning. He chose with finality. And then he was gone, not erased, not lost, just finished. And in that quiet completion lives everything that matters. That is the 12th step. That is the Stoic way.